Previously on Higurashi When They Cry console arcs.
ひなみ沢症候群のお話は監督とリカからお聞きしましたよ。自分がその病気にかかっているなんていい気分ではありませんけど、私の病気に対してあなたがどれだけ真剣に取り組んでいたのかくらいそばにいて感じないはずがありませんもの。
ええ、私にとってね、ひなみ沢症候群の研究は私のすべてだった。だからね、自分でもおかしな話だけど、あなたのその病気を治さずにこんなことをしていることに今も両親が痛まないわけじゃないの。
それならもうやめてくださいませんこと。今ならまだ間に合うかもしれません。私もここに連れてこられるまでのこと、ニーニーを隠していたことも全て水に流しても構いませんわ。
そうね、それができたら。でもね。
Slowly, Takano turned her eyes this way. Her eyes were dreadfully glistening, full of chilling hatred and bloodlust.
あなたを憎みきれない弱い自分を知れば知るほど、どうしても認めたくない。むしろ消し去ってやりたい存在がいるの。それが私と同じ時間に生きて同じ空気を吸っていることすら愛おしい。不具体転とでも言うのかしら。せめて同じ世界にどちらかがいなければ、私もここまで心を闇に侵されることもなかったのかもね。
そんなにもリカが憎いとお思いですの？
ええ、あの子というよりもあの子を中心とした運命ってやつがズタズタに引き裂いてやりたいほど憎くて仕方がない。この黒く煮えたぎった感情はね、あの子の赤く染まった臓物を見るまでは収まらないのよ。それが私の復讐なの。私を裏切り絶望に叩き込んだこのクソったれな運命ってやつにね。
あなたもおつらい目に遭ってきたんですのね。
Takano shut her mouth and didn't say a word. I didn't have anything more to say either. I don't feel hatred. If I had to nail it down, I'd have to call it empathy.
クライアントがね、ついさっき言ってきたのよ。もう惨劇を起こしても無駄。緊急マニュアルが発動しようとしまいと、アルファベットプロジェクトとひなみ沢症候群の研究はもうおしまいだと。私が追い出すつもりだった反対派はこっちの知らないところで不祥事を起こしてとっくの昔に権力の座から追われていたのよ。その結果どうなったと思う？
So that was that phone call you received earlier then, huh?
アルファベットプロジェクトは新しくトップの座についたそのクライアント連中によって乗っ取られたわ。そして私を支援するって話も、ひなみ沢症候群の研究を継続させるって甘い誘いも全部なかったことになった。私がわざわざ大掛かりなことをしなくても勝手に権力が転がり込んできたんだから。つまり私を焚きつけてきた奴らは最初から勢力争いが目的だったってわけよ。そうよ。ええ、そう。私はただのピエロよ。トカゲの尻尾よ。使えそうな時だけ都合のいいことを吹き込んできて、いらなくなったらあっさり切り捨てる。連中がそういう奴らだってことくらい最初から知っていたわ。でもね、だからといってそんな連中の思惑で振り回されるのは私は絶対にごめんだ。人を散々利用して踏みつけて、自分たちだけ我が世の春を謳歌して楽しむなど死んでもさせてたまるか。どうせ滅ぶなら もろともに滅んでやるわ。奴らを巻き添えにしてね。
そんな、だったらこんなこと何の意味も。
動くな。
何をする気だ。
覚えてるかしら、リカちゃん。軽度の感染者を一気にレベル5状態の症状に引き上げるアンチワクチン H173 のことを。私はそれをずっと研究し続けて、そしてつい先日に改良版を完成させたわ。空気感染さえも可能にした新型ウイルス H17302 をね。
Oh shit. You're going to unleash an airborne strain of level 5 Hinamizawa syndrome into the area. And it'll probably spread well past this prefecture too. You're going to unleash a level 5 Hinamizawa syndrome pandemic all throughout Japan. That's your plan, isn't it?
やめてくださいです。そんなことしたら村の人たちは。
終わりよ。
It's not just the village. What's to stop this thing from spreading to other areas outside the village? This thing is an airborne strain, so it could very well spread to all throughout the whole country.
いえ、始まりかしら。
Especially if there are strong enough winds to carry it.
神々に生贄を捧げる厳かな祭りのね。
やめろ
ー! Devoid of any heart. Right before our eyes, Takano fired the signal, which burst at high altitude into a red firework-like pattern. As if a blood-stained flower had just bloomed. It was distorted, ugly, and it had drawn out a cruel pattern. What?
久しぶりね、高野。あなたの強い意志は本当に大したもの。だけど、あなたのその魂は全てを飲み込むしかできない孤独の深淵。
Wait, is there two Rikas?
それでも戦う。身の程を超えて高きを望んで何も手に入れることがなくなった今でも。
当たり前よ。あんただけは絶対に幸せにさせてたまるものか。私は私の力で運命を切り開いてきたのよ。だから私はあんたの存在だけは絶対に認めない。
なら戦いましょう。あなたの気の済むまで。でも私はあなたには負けない。
When I rubbed my eyes, her figure disappeared, just like Keiichi and the others. What the hell? Was that really a person? Or was it?
リカちゃん、
僕は頑張りました。みんなを救いたい。今度こそ幸せな時間を手に入れるんだって必死に頑張りましたのです。いろんなものを信じて、もう一度だけ信じてみようと。そしてやっともしかしたらって希望を持ったところだったのに、みんな打ち砕かれてしまったのです。僕の目の前で。やっぱり今度もダメだったのです。 リカ。
みんなもうすぐ死んでしまいます。泣き症状を発症して村人全員一人残らず、もう止められないのです。どうしようもないのです。みんなを守れる最善を尽くしたつもりだったのに、敵はそれ以上をやってしまいました。そんな中で僕たちだけが生き残って、一体何がどうなるっていうのですか。
Rika-chan screamed and cried out the words she'd been holding back until now. All we could do was stand there and listen quietly. It was a deep, sorrowful despair that Rika-chan alone could understand. After all the anticipation, hope, and effort she experienced while living through the same time period hundreds and thousands of times, only to end up even more disappointed by the indignation and resignation. But it's easy to sympathize with her, even if we don't truly understand the meaning of her sorrow. If we could just understand that feeling, I'm sure.
僕はリカになんて謝れば。
リカちゃん
Huh?
それはさておき、敵は思ったよりも大勢だ。しかも飛び道具を持っている。状況は決して甘くはない。
However, Mion raised her fist and spoke up.
効か不効か、こっちは迎撃する立場だ。しかもサトコのトラップがワンサと仕掛けられた、いわば私たちのホームグラウンド。奴らはこっちが子供ばかり、しかも数と火力に物を言わせて油断しているだろうけど、その目論みが甘いってことを思い知らせてやろう。
敵は強ければ強いほど燃えてくるよ。ね、ケイチ君。
おうよミオン、ここは地理情報に詳しいやつが勝敗を左右する。リーダーをお前に戻して指揮権を任せるぜ。
はいよ、こいつは一子相伝の極意だ。しっかり目に焼き付けて来年からは頼んだよ、ケイちゃん。
Mia and I grinned and exchanged a high five. When does a high five sound like a fucking bottle popping? Now, commencing the counterattack. And so it continues. Greetings, my name's Neosekken, and welcome back to my Let's Play of the Higurashi with Cry console arcs, and oh god! Ushi's in pain! Somebody get him a band-aid!
ちょっとシオンさん、もう少し優しくやってくださいって。
Shion, how could you? Ushi let out a pitiful shriek as a piece of disinfectant-soaked bandage was applied to the wound on his arm. Oh, yeah, that's gonna sting. His reaction was totally overblown. The bleeding had already stopped. It'll still sting if it's still an open wound. That wound needs time to actually properly close up.
こっちは名誉の負傷者なんですよ。ちょっと思いやりのある治療をしていただいても罰は当たらないと思うんですけどね。
やってますよ。それに積年の恨みを加算してもいいのなら、アルコールじゃなくて練り唐辛子をすり込んでやってるところですからね。
どうせアルコールなら熱燗を晩酌してもらってこうキューッともらえたら最高なんですけど。
Well, you can enjoy your hot drinks while I will enjoy my cold one instead.
のほほほほ。
はいはい、中年親父の妄想に付き合うほど焼きも回ってませんので。
Does this old guy seriously want me rubbing habanero powder into his wounds? Well, he did fiercely fight like a raging lion to protect me earlier, though. What the hell is habanero? It sounds especially spicy. I assume it's spicier than crushed red pepper.
その先シオンさんでしたっけ？
Maybe it's comparable to cayenne pepper or something, I don't know.
大石さんが終わったらこっちもお願いしていいですか？
Wait, Agasaka, you're here! Hi!
ああ、ずるいっす。俺の方が重傷なんだから、こっちが先っす。
Detective Kumagai interrupted Detective Akasaka and started making a fuss. Even if he was more seriously hurt, we're talking a difference between cuts and bruises.
うわー、バカタレが。お前らには年寄りを敬うって気持ちがないのか。
Shion clearly doesn't.
わしの怪我を心配せんでどうする。
ジジイのは突入の時につまずいて転んだ突き指だけでしょうが。とっとと自分で抜いて湿布薬当てときなさい。はい、これ。
大石、貴様その扱いは何じゃ。あ？そもそも今回の作戦はわしの一番手柄じゃろうが。
赤坂さん、おでこ消毒しますから前髪上げてください。
あ
ああ、なんかすっげえ羨ましいっす。早く次、俺。
人の話はちゃんと聞けって学校で教わらなかったか貴様ら。
The old man from forensics was making a lot of noise and blowing wind everywhere. With his face bright red. Stop blowing wind everywhere! That shit's gonna stink! It might look like I'm treating him coldly, but I do know the truth. It's just as he said. This whole plan is all thanks to him. In order to help Sadako, I went on a wild rampage that forced Kumagai-san and the others to stop me. Then they forced me to sleep using sedatives, arrested me, and brought me into the interrogation room. Then I woke up just after Ushi got back from the Sonozaki main house, and he calmly listened as I explained the situation to him.
ということは、リカちゃまをおとりにお姉と葛西たちが迂回路を通って背後をつくってことですね。
ええ。ですが敵もどれだけの兵装と人数を揃えているか分かりません。我々としては診療所への突入と人質の確保に努め、その後合流して犯行グループの検挙に当たるつもりです。正直現状で高野たちを逮捕するにはいささか火力不足が否めないわけで。
なんか国家権力が効いて呆れますね。凶悪犯に茶化一つぶっ放すこともできないんですか？
拳銃なんて引き金一つかけただけで自分の身体と引き換えにしなきゃならないもんですから。正直せこいやり方ですが、園崎組に相手の火力を少しでも減らしてもらえた方がこちらとしては大助かりなんですよ。
Unfortunately, we're gonna need that firepower given who we're up against.
で、私はこのまま釈放されるってわけですか？
まあそうしたいのは山々なんですけど、大高のバカがずいぶん根に持ってあんたを狙ってましてね。ことが片付いてほとぼりが冷めるまではしばらくおとなしくしててくださいな。
結局私はのけ者か。里子の救出に私だって加勢したいのに。
Just then, the door to the interrogation room swung open with a bang, and the old man from forensics came in dressed in a lab coat, with his face burning red.
だからじいさん、入るときはノックぐらいしろって何度言わせたら。
そんな暇あるか、大バカタレ。これを見ろ、大石。
Then, looking short of breath, the old man handed a photo to Ushi. Detective Kumagai, Akasaka-san, and I all happened to be nearby, so we gave it a look too. The writing was blurry and hard to make out, likely because of the enlargement. Some sort of alphabetical symbols were lined up. Maybe a chemical formula?
これがどうかしました？
これがよく読めんのか、貴様ら。こりゃ国際法で禁止されてる細菌兵器用の散布ボンベじゃ。
Yeah, the thing that Takano is allegedly going to use to spread L5 airborne Hinamizawa syndrome all across the village. That, right?
の
最近兵器って、貧者の核兵器と言われるあれですか？
そうじゃ。どんなやつを使うつもりかわからんが、ウイルスは毒ガスと違って拡散力と浸透力が格段に高い。もし万一村に散布でもされたら、人口2000人の小村などひとたまりもないぞ。
なんでこんなものが野号地に。
どうしましたか、シオンさん。
野号地って言えばひなみ沢から見て風上だから、農薬散布のヘリコプターはここから出発するんだって前にお姉が言ってました。
クマちゃん、沖宮航空からのヘリ飛行許可の申請は？
申請は確かまだっす。ただ農薬散布は祭り明けすぐに行われるから、先行して配備されていてもおかしくないっす。
行きましょう、野号地に。じいさん、案内してください。
いや、実は最後に行ったのは30年以上前じゃから、道にはとんと詳しくなくてな。
じゃあここに詳しい人って誰ですか？私もあまり自信ないですよ。
Ushi turned back as he said that, but Kumagai was silently shaking his head, and there was no point in even asking Akasaka. Unless they had someone who knew the area, they'd waste a lot of time getting lost on the way, and that would be the end of this story. In which case...
私が案内します。連れて行ってください。
シオンさん、あんた道わかるんですか？
私もかなり前ですけど、ただダム工事反対運動の時は頻繁に足運んでたから大丈夫だと思います。
Well, you got no one else at this point, old man, so I'd take her up on her offer, personally. Wushi frowned for a moment while thinking it over. Even if my release is a pretty safe assumption at this point, I'm still a suspect currently under arrest. He could be held liable for taking me outside.
おいさん、行きましょう。
赤坂さん、
好きな皆が迷ってる時間が惜しい。ならば連行するという名目で彼女を連れ出してはいかがですか？
わかりました。こうなったら一円卓勝だ。もし退職金が減額されたら、園崎に差額分の請求書を持っていきますからね。
There you go.
差額なんて耳っちい。いっそ倍にしろくらい言ってください。言うのはただですけどね。
After that, it became a race against time. But we were going to win it. We're gonna win it! The helicopter was just about to take off, but it was forced to stay grounded when Akasaka-san fired a warning shot. Well, I guess that pretty much shoots down the whole theory of Yaguchi being completely out of commission, courtesy of the events of Mitsukushi Ura. This kind of shoots that theory down, doesn't it? Apparently the chopper could still take off, even in spite of that. And the mountain dogs in the nearby shack must not have been expecting an attack, because they didn't show much resistance when Ushi rushed in, so they were quickly rounded up by the police officers. Still, it was a dangerous situation. A biological weapon canister was loaded on that helicopter, just as the old man from forensics deduced.
はあ。それにしても、私ここのところ誰かの治療ばっかりしているんですよね。
Well, good news. At least we definitely don't have to worry about an airborne strain of Hinamizawa syndrome getting out now.
結局、鉄火場には参加できなかったし。
Bad news is, we're still dealing with a rogue Takano and a pack of mountain dogs.
なんだか、性に合わないことしているな。
Somehow, I found myself making weird complaints as I pasted a bandage to Akasaka-san's forehead. I really did want to see Sis and Kei-chan on the battlefield, and I'd feel better going on a rampage over there with them. When they raided the clinic, the whole facility was apparently unmanned aside from the hostages tied up inside. Kasai told me about it. The squad we thought was defending the clinic actually broke off before the police surrounded the facility in order to pursue Sis's separate advance team. Well, that just worked out really well for us now, didn't it? And what's more, that squad was oddly quick to retreat and disappear into the mountains. Ah, I see. That virus was their trump card, so they were probably thinking they'd be hit by that if they stuck around any longer. Makes sense. However, all their schemes backfired thanks to our successful interception. Thinking about that helped clear up my sour mood. Just a little. Then, Akasaka-sen gazed at me and gave me a smile.
何ですか、赤坂さん。ニヤニヤ人の顔見ないでくださいよ。
いや、ごめん。でも、怪我人を手当てするシオンさんも。どうだい？ナースさんを本気で目指してみたら。
Please don't give her that idea. She would instill terror across generations of inpatients. I can practically guarantee you that. Especially of her bedside manner.
赤坂さんまで。このグヘヘ親父のそばにいたら、悪玉ウイルスに侵されてスケベ根性が染みついちゃいますよ。
ちょっと、それあんまりじゃないですか、シオンさん。私と赤坂さんはそりゃもう義兄弟の杯を交わした仲でして。
Turning a deaf ear to whatever Ushi was babbling about, I suddenly had a thought. Up until now, I was always aggressive. I always believed I couldn't move forward unless I was the one on the attack. So, even if someone ended up getting hurt, even if it was me, I always thought that was the unavoidable price of it. But, while there's some truth to that, it's also misguided. You have to protect things, or you'll lose them. If you don't stop moving, you lose the ability to comprehend the situation. I never noticed until now, but I found something beyond myself that I considered precious. And after reaching that understanding, I was finally able to reconsider the idea I had that passive behavior was foolish. What made me realize that was...
さて、あっちの方も心配ですね。そろそろ私たちも向かいますか。シオンさんもミオンさんたちのことが心配でしょう。
そうですね。でも少しだけです。
さすがは園崎家次期当主の片割れ。お姉さんへの信頼も深いってわけですな。
I kept quiet and smiled back at him. That's not it. It's not because of a bond of blood. It has nothing to do with our sibling relationship. Because I know. I understand that she and I each have something precious that we'll do everything we can to protect. That's right. I can't be her any longer. And she can't be me either. But that's fine. Because that's enough to be happy. I'm sure of it.
私は園崎シオンで十分です。
I looked up at the sky as I muttered that to myself. Good luck, Mion. I'll be doing my best as Shion, too. Even more than ever. So, I'll have to say goodbye to the name Mion. It felt like an intense weight that was resting on my shoulders suddenly disappeared. I love explosions. Sadako's trap diversions were becoming even stronger and more effective with Mion's support.
ひばり7より本部へターゲットを発見追跡するひばり5だ俺がやる俺に任せ
Naturally, Mion was also intimately familiar with these mountain trails, since she often traveled here for local activities. And combined with Mion's skillful leadership and tactics, they were able to display terrifying fighting power.
ひばり5沈黙
あのバカすっかり乗せられやがって
Since Rika-chan was feeling fatigued, we hid her away in a mountain hut and dedicated ourselves to scouting and information gathering. Then, after assessing the enemy's numbers and general progress, we set up a hotline with Sadako acting as our assault and reconnaissance liaison. Mion delivered instructions via walkie-talkie stolen from the mountain dogs, while Ren and I focused on diversions and attacks.
ウグイスエイトだ見つけた回り込んで待ち伏せずこっちに追い込め了解したこっちだな
Ren and I scattered, inviting the enemies to follow us to their doom. Traps only activate when they're stepped on, but sometimes it can be effective to activate them yourself with the right timing. We confirmed it with Sadako and familiarized ourselves with it. Then one by one, sometimes fighting back, sometimes lying hidden, and sometimes launching the attacks ourselves, we steadily cut down our pursuers.
どこだ出てきやが
Our primary method of attack was repelling them with Sadako's traps, but Rain and I used the element of surprise to launch attacks of our own. Even if the traps failed to finish them off, attacks that land when they're off guard and in an elevated psychological state are effective, even against highly trained mountain dogs.
ひばり6やられた落とし穴に加えてどうした応答しろひばり6くそ何がどうなってる
The radio communication actually added to their confusion. Hearing about the damage other groups were suffering one after another was making them nervous, slowing them down and forcing them to keep their thoughts simple. Once they fall into that mental state, even these mountain dogs are like peeled shrimp lying on the cutting board. Snatch the enemy gun, then bang bang, fire off a few gunshots. It was a way of signaling that an enemy was taken down. Rain and I had already lost track of how many times they rang out, but Mion was keeping an eye on the map and organizing the information, so she knew exactly what we were doing and was able to work out how to handle the enemy movements.
ミオンさん、ケイチさんとレナさんもなかなかの戦果を上げてくださっておりますわ。あと少しで南からの連中は予定通りの場所に移動する構えですわ。
了解残存兵力はおそらくここに集結するねどうするよ敵さん南からってことはさっき私たちが足止めしてた連中かそれで撃墜数がこれだと戦力は3割減ってとこだね戦術的には大敗北だよ負傷者の対応に通常1人から2人ってことは手の空いた兵士はゼロってわけだまっとうな指揮官なら本部に撤退を申し入れるね
こちらひばり1隊員に負傷者多数負傷者への対応で追撃に手が回らないこれ以上の追撃は断念せざるを得ない
ひばり1損害は大きいが我が方は確実に敵の行動権を狭めているぞ撤退は認めない現状兵力で戦線を維持せよ
Well, how about that? I guess Okunogi's not a terribly respectable commander. Huh, Okunogi?
くそひばり1より全員本部から死ねと命令だ装備を再点検しろ進軍を再開するぞ
でも高野さんたちは頭に血が上ってるからそれを許可しない 指揮官は撤退を却下され、士気が低下したまま追撃を再開。こいつは叩く絶好のチャンスだね。さとこ、レナと一緒に Z 地区に誘い込んで。あそこのトラップはだいぶごっついよ。
Oh, this ought to be fun.
それからケイちゃんは X 地区に転戦を。こんな面白いゲームはないね。
さすがミオンってところだな。生まれてくる時代を間違えたんじゃねえか。
頑張ってね、ケイザマジシャン。前任者を超えるのは大変だよ。
K the magician, M the tactician. That's a bit of a ring to it, wouldn't you say?
ケイちゃんが魔術師なら、こっちは上昇カイザーってやつだね。
I think M the tactician is better personally.
もう裏山全体が手に取るようだよ。
Mion was the type to have her strength shift around exponentially. When she's feeling depressed, she gets seriously depressed. But when she's in great shape, she turns into something incredible. Sounds a bit like manic depression. And Mion understands that this battle in the mountains is ultimately just a feint. We're simply buying time until the Sonozaki group and the police arrive. Takano didn't have enough strength to walk through this steep mountainous area, so she was constantly screaming at the mountain dogs over the radio, even as she was running out of breath. She wasn't wearing a headset like the other mountain dogs, so she yelled into the communicator that another squad member was carrying, and he was tired of enduring her endless shouting. Poor bastard.
どいつもこいつも頼りないったらありゃしない。それでも特殊部隊なの？天下の山犬はどうしたというのよ。
She bit her lower lip in irritation, then clung to her left arm and squeezed her nails in. Looking closely, you could see nail marks all over her arm. In her left hand was the scrapbook containing her grandfather's research. She wasn't sure why she was holding it at a time like this. Perhaps she subconsciously wanted to receive her grandfather's help and feel his warmth. The mountain dogs had already suffered a catastrophic blow. They were pushing through mountainous terrain with no landscape awareness, repeatedly being worn out by the thick web of traps. It was enough to even make strong men like themselves give in.
うちの三叉にゃ突撃以外に知ってる言葉はねえのか。
Nah, she's like a Pokemon, you see. Oh, attack is the only word that she knows, because she is literally the attack Pokemon.
ウグイス1よりウグイス13。用心しろ。お前の左翼が沈黙した。今度はお前が狙われるぞ。ふざけるなよ。なんだってんだよ。俺かよ、畜生。
He was understandably getting impatient. It was a repeat of what happened just a moment ago. They were gradually being scraped off from the left, one by one. And up next would be him. So the enemy will be coming from 9 o'clock? No, that sort of reasoning won't work on these demons. In mountainous terrain like this, even scanning all 360 degrees isn't enough. Even if you watch everything, from down at your feet to overhead, it's still not enough. Where are they coming from? Come on, you piece of shit! Come on! The man held his pistol and looked back and forth, terrified. A long-range weapon should overpower any geographical disadvantage and turn the situation in his favor. But that's only true in a high-visibility environment. It's not nearly as effective in a mountainous region full of vegetation, especially at dusk. And moreover, He knew that other squad members were scattered all around, and the soldiers still had no idea where their primary target, Rika Furude, was located. Until they could determine her precise location, indiscriminately opening fire was strictly prohibited. There was no way he could risk using his weapon under those conditions. A rustling sound came from the bushes behind the man. He thought he saw someone, so he fired without thinking. The scent of gunpowder spread as a bullet flew into the empty bush. Was it just his imagination? That moment, a strange response came from at his feet. Looking down, he had stepped right on a trap, as if it was all a setup. And the moment he tried to move, his upper body became entangled in a net falling from above. Uh-oh. The next moment, he heard the rustling sound from behind him again, but this time a humanoid figure popped out. However, his reliable weapon was caught in the ropes, so he couldn't properly aim. And then the figure let out a roar.
死神が戻ってきたぞ
That was all it took. The moment he jumped up in fear, his thought process became completely basic. Just as Sadako predicted. Sadako was waiting on a branch overhead and dropped a metal bucket down on him. And that strategic warhead slipped over the man's head with perfect precision. He sounds so distraught. I love it. The bucket had some peculiar drawing on the side. What was that supposed to be? Some mysterious creature? Oh, that's it. It's that weird-looking mascot character from some educational program that sings songs and draws pictures with girls. This sentence and this face should never mix. I just want to put that out there. This is legitimately terrifying. Seeing these two things together like this. Rina jumped out from another bush and slammed her fist into the man in the bucket. No, slammed wasn't the proper word to describe just how sharp the strike was. Her fist drilled right through him. Beyond the man that was just sent flying, Keiichi moved to the designated location as quickly as possible. An intense aura was radiating from his entire body, like that of a fearsome magical beast. And he began swinging a stick of cypress wood around as hard as he could, like a Tokugawa-era soldier wielding the sword of certain death. Destructive power can't be determined from a single object. It's based on the relative speed of both colliding objects. Reina launching the man at high speed, combined with Keiichi's fierce strike, produced an attack with unbelievable destructive potential. An exhilaratingly pleasant "wah" sound echoed around as the man went flying in the complete opposite direction that Reina's blow had originally sent him. The man fainted and fell silent as soon as he landed. As soon as that opportunity presented itself, Ren and I leapt out and tied his hands behind his back. While Ren and I handled tying up our enemies, Sako sharpened all her senses to seek out any signs of activity around us. And then she relayed the intel about our surroundings to Mion like a radar operator. We were all getting excited while waiting for Mion to relay orders about where to attack next. Hit him below the belt.
なんだいみんなのその目は。まだまだ食い足りないって。確かにね。我が部としちゃようやく体が温まってきた程度だしね。言っちまう？ この山でみんなやっちまうか。
Logistical capabilities mean more than the strength of an individual. The Japanese people have demonstrated that. Right now, each of these club members is a hero on par with 1,000,000 soldiers. Superior numbers and firepower are irrelevant in the face of guerrilla tactics. Accurately assessing the battlefield situation and reporting intel back to HQ is the key contribution of a reconnaissance force. In that respect, Sako was the ideal person for the job, since she was familiar with both the terrain and the location of the traps, so she was best able to act quickly. That, plus the Reina/Keiichi tag team combination was simply exquisite. No, you could say it was perfect. On top of that, Mion was using her geographic intuition and knowledge of each person's abilities to organize activities and deliver instructions, like moving chess pieces. With everyone working like that, who could stop them? Okanogi's original estimate of the situation was already looking too soft. Okanogi finally realized it. Before this siege operation began, he said that one of them was equivalent to one platoon, but that was clearly no longer the case. One of them was equivalent to an elite tank division. There's simply no way an infantry division can take on a tank division. Even better would be an entire squadron. Where was their air support for heavy bombardment? Or their artillery base for fire support? They needed field artillery capable of rewriting the landscape of this mountain by punching it full of holes. If that's not possible, then how about a submarine to deploy tactical nuclear weapons? Now, nukes would be overkill, okay? No need to go that far. And even that isn't enough. Then retreat! I'm just saying, if nukes can't take out a group of children, then you might have miniature kaijus more terrifying than Godzilla on your hands. Okanogi no longer had any doubts. His foe was both powerful and cunning, and the tide was clearly turning in their favor. They had become mighty heroes, on par with thousands of soldiers. Can we take this then as an indirect admission that you see yourselves as villains?
Are we the baddies?
At the very least, he wanted to look upon their faces to see for himself what sort of demons they were. That's right. They say Hinamizawa is the village where demons dwell. Then he understood. These guys were demons.
こちらひばり店。子供の笑い声が聞こえる。包囲された。頼む、助けてくれ。ひばり店、退却しろ、退却しろ。退却ってどっちにだよ。ああ！
大鳥ないんだ。敵の一人を発見、追跡している。応援を送ってくれ。
大鳥ナイン、どこにいるんだ。所在、周辺の状況を送られたし。
霧が出てる。
A fog, huh?
寒い、寒い。
It's the fog of war.
ここは河原？
大鳥ナイン、地図上ありえない。落ち着いて状況を確認しろ。
そんな河原の向こうに死んだ姉ちゃんが。
大鳥ナイン、大鳥ナイン、応答しろ。大鳥ナイン、沈黙。
無理だ。奴はこの山の鬼だ。俺は知ってる。これは鬼隠しなんだ。俺たちは全員この山で消されちまうんだ。
バカなことを口走るのはやめろ。各班長は再点呼で状況把握と指揮高揚に努めろ。敵は悪魔なんかじゃない。ただの子供だ。ビビるな。格の違いを見せてやれ。
I don't know. I think having a roll call right now would be a very bad idea, because I have a sneaking suspicion the amount of people that would actually respond are shockingly low at this point. Then, during that confusion, Look! Look! You see? You see? Hanyu! I was right! Hanyu was pretending to be Rika! She was with us all along!
聞こえる。誰のインカムから聞こえてるんだ。俺じゃない、俺じゃない。誰だ。
大鳥3だ。今の声は誰のものだ。インカムには名乗ってから発言しろ。大鳥1、一度撤退しフォーメーションの再編を愚信する。なんだ。今の声は女？子供？なんでだ。
Your worst nightmare.
なんで子供の声が聞こえるんだ。
人の身に過ぎたるを知らぬ愚かなる人間たち。汚すことを許されぬ聖地を踏み荒らす罪を知るがいい。感謝しなさいよ。聖地を汚した罪を償う機会を与えてあげるんだから。
Damn on you, you scary.
ちくしょう、誰かの印鑑を奪ってやがるんだ。敵の指揮検体戦術に乗るな。
いや違う。この無線の周波数はなんだこれは。こんな番号は存在しない。電波ジャックだ。
恐れを知ることかなわぬ哀れな人間たち。いいわ。あんたたちが我が身でしか知ることができないというなら、私がそれを教えてあげましょう。
ウグイス1だ。護衛が来ていない。バカな。どこへ行った。応答しろ。
ほら、哀れなウグイスが一羽踏み込むことを許されない地に迷い込んできたわ。そんなにも知りたい？鬼の世を知りたい？じゃあ人の世に別れを告げなさい。私の忠告に耳を貸さなかった愚を今から思い知ることね。
Again, Hanyu, you scary.
誰の悲鳴だ今のは。
The team pet has gone rabid on us. She's got rabies or something. She's bloodthirsty.
ウグイス、天候を取れ。
またやられた。誰が沈黙した。それより本部、俺の左肩には誰かいるんだよな。俺は孤立してるんじゃないよな。
まだ聞きたいのね。痛みを伴う声を。
なんだよ今の音。何がひしゃげたらあんな音になるんだよ。
俺昔電車の飛び込みを見たことある。あん時と同じだ。全身がひしゃげる音だ。
やだ、そんな死に方ごめんだ。死にたくねえ、死にたくねえ。やめてくれ、山の神様。俺も好きでやってるわけじゃねえんだ。給料もらってやってるだけなんだ。
But the phrase "I was only just following orders" has been used to justify so many atrocities throughout human history. That shit ain't gonna fly, Phoenix 4.
ウグイス1より本部。ダメだ、士気の高揚は困難。隊員の脱落と士気低下は深刻。これ以上の戦線維持は困難。損害が増えるだけだ。
だから落ち着け、ウグイス1。他の隊員は野戦の素人ばかりじゃねえか。お前はあの地獄の卒業生じゃねえか。そのお前が混乱してどうするんだ。落ち着け、お前が範を示せ。
悪魔だ。悪魔が出た。
こんな感じでいいかしらね。
What are you doing to them, by the way, in all due seriousness?
本部ウグイスワンが落としない。そんなあの人がやられるなんてダメだ。やっぱり悪魔だ。
ダメだ。クソ。敵は心理戦も上手だってのか。ガキどものくせに俺たちを心理戦でまくってのか。
The radio was supposed to be a weapon for effective communication and coordination, but it backfired on them, thanks to their significantly reduced morale. Nobody had any information on enemy activities, but they were all constantly interrupting their squad mates with distracting radio chatter. Even though keeping calm would be ideal, it's difficult to manage when you're isolated in mountainous enemy territory, where you can't tell left from right or front from back, and you're feeling exhausted from suffering repeated enemy attacks. The most effective way to deal with this would be to order everyone to stop using their radios, but that would give the enemy an opportunity to pick them off one by one. Like they aren't doing that already! Okanoki couldn't help but dread those club members he still didn't have a clear picture of. Meanwhile, Takano's constant shouting with no regard for the current situation was becoming comical. She was single-mindedly shouting at them to attack. Again, she's the attack Pokemon. She's just saying her name over and over again, because that's all she knows. The commander who sent her subordinates into this death zone was such a callous leader. But ironically enough, Takano's reckless attack orders did have some merit. The enemy was achieving overwhelming results, but they were indeed retreating, and their range of mobility was shrinking. Their primary strategy was to lure their foes into a trap zone, then retreat from there, and lure them into another trap zone. In other words, they were bleeding away their defensive territory. The mountain dogs were already in shambles, but the enemy also has significantly reduced slope of activity. The fact that the other side resorted to psychological warfare indicated that they were in a hurry to settle things. If they were to retreat now, it would render all the damage they had inflicted thus far meaningless. So it looks to me like things are going to be coming right down to the wire for both sides, one way or the other. Last man standing for each faction. Who's gonna win? Unfortunately, they had to keep doing as the princess commanded, but they'd be able to grab their enemies by the neck soon. Aw, did you stub your toe? Takano was walking out front and completely absorbed by her own shouting, but her foot got caught on a rope tied around the base of a tree, which triggered a huge log to accelerate from the opposite direction and plow into her with great centripetal force. Oh, I wish I could see this in animated form. It's so beautiful, picturing it in my head. By the time she noticed, it was already too late. Takano took a heavy blow to her side, then tumbled down the slope of the valley.
Sansa!
Well, good news, everybody. You no longer have to deal with major attack, but now major pain. Because pain is all this major is feeling right now. Okanoki scolded the two subordinates who were gaping in awe behind him. But the two of them looked at one another like they were hesitant to take another step.
何をしている? さっさと行かんか!
しかし、降りた先でまた罠があったら。
バカ野郎! サンサの身の安全の方が大事だろうが! は
The two of them rushed down the slope in a hurry, then lent their shoulders to Takano and carefully led her back up. Takano must have hit a rock or something, because blood was flowing from her forehead, her uniform was torn, and her arms were covered in scratches.
サンサ、大丈夫ですか？すぐに治療を。おい、衛生担当に連絡。
Uh-oh. She's now gone fully homicidal. Well, even more fully homicidal than she already was, because, I mean, to be fair, she did basically just condemn all of Hinamizawa and any surrounding area to death via L5 Hinamizawa syndrome. But, well, she might... I could totally picture her just getting so pissed off at this point. She might just grab a random rock or something and then just go dash off into the woods and attack anything that moves. Please do that, by the way. That'd be so funny.
Eh?
To me.
殺してやる！あのガキどもがつけ上がりやがって！全員生皮剥いで八つ裂きにしてやる！
Takano roared that out, then grabbed a radio and began shouting into it. Her intense rage had completely replaced her usual cool demeanor. Even her trusted advisor Okanogi looked dismayed to see it.
聞こえる。私は高野よ。三刀陸さよ。あんたたちの最上位の上司よ。引きなさい。鬼もいないし神様もいないわ。もしいるなら戦いなさい。神などその座から引きずり下ろしてやるのよ。ひばりとウグイスは合流して戦力を立て直しなさい。大鳥は白鷺の残存と合流。敵は山頂付近の営林署の資材小屋あたりを本拠地にしている模様。高所を取られてるわ。こちらの動きが筒抜けのはず。奇襲はあって当たり前よ。差し違えてでも倒しなさい。
サンサ、一旦下がってフォーメーションの再編の許可を。日が暮れたら敵の追撃どころか脱出も困難になります。
許可できるわけないでしょ。私たちは今奴らを完全に包囲して追い詰めているのよ。ここで退けば逃がすわよ。私たちは両手に手をかけてる。あとは締めるだけなの。
サンサ、お怪我に触りません。早く治療を。
うるさいわこのヘボが。あんたたちがしっかりしていればこんな事態にはならなかったんでしょうが。そんな風に口先だけで心配する暇があったら奴らの首でも腕でも引きちぎってここに持ってきやがれ。
While Takano continued shouting at her subordinates over the radio, Okanogi received contact over a different frequency. Okanogi already knew what Takano was going to say, so he stepped a short distance away from her and quietly listened to his radio.
指揮者より大鳥1、緊急事態です。野号地の特殊部隊が襲撃を受けたようです。H17302 の散布作戦ですが、完全に沈黙しました。今、野号地に回っていた警察部隊もこちらに急行しているとのことです。
Okanogi understood everything. They were utterly defeated. They wouldn't have been taken in like this if the enemy was a group of conventional camouflage-dressed soldiers. Somewhere deep in his heart, he was disconsolate that in the end he was unable to capture that group of kids. And he also slightly underestimated the power of the police.
わかった。そいつは東京の各校に伝えたか。どうした？
各校との連絡がつきません。あらゆる緊急ルートを介してもなしのつぶてです。東京に何かあったか、あるいは
見捨てられたってことか。
Yep, it's over. For you. After that masochistic fit of laughter, Okanogi slammed his fist into a nearby tree. The truth is, he received a lot of money for dealing with Takano's self-complacency. But after all this, he was going to push all the responsibility onto her. And as soon as he received contact from the real masters in Tokyo, he would have been ordered to kill Takano and surrender. But now that all contact had been cut off, they were in the same position. If they surrendered in this situation, naturally they'd be charged with their crimes. Even so, that their very lives would be at stake. He intended to keep an eye on the dancing clown, but he ended up inadvertently playing the clown himself. Peak irony! Nevertheless, Okanogi did his best to calm his burning, hateful thoughts. Yes, he couldn't bear to let it end this way. He thought about running away for a moment, but his pride wouldn't allow that. Strategically, there was no way to win or to escape. In which case, he had to at least be tactical. Just one small-scale victory will be enough to bring him satisfaction. With that in mind, Okanogi raised his head and addressed his subordinate over the radio. Well, I mean, hey, if you realize you're screwed no matter what, you might as well go out swinging.
作戦を変更だ。R の捜索部隊を全部こちらに回せ。山犬部隊の底力を連中に見せてやる。はっ。
Okanogi cut off his radio and walked over to Takano, who was still shouting. He muttered to himself that this would be the last time he ever spoke to her, then gave her a salute and spoke up.
高野さんさ、境内に衛生班を残してあります。そこで傷の治療を。我々は残りを率いて。
My right ankle was painful and inflamed. It must have happened when I stumbled earlier. It didn't hurt as much at first, but the pain gradually accumulated as I continued running, and by now it was bad enough I was dragging my foot a little as I walked. Keiichi and Mion couldn't bear to see me like that, so they told me to hide behind a storage hut. Keiichi's plan was designed to keep our enemies away from me, of course. However, I disregarded their concerns and took a detour through the mountains to arrive back at the shrine. Oh my god! Rika, why? Why? The shrine grounds were deserted. Did Takano's minions think I'd never come back this way? Oh no. Takano's heading this way too, so they're gonna run into each other and... oh god. Yeah, I guess we gotta get one last little set piece worth of drama out of the way and have these two meet and create one final little desperate last stand for Takano. Oh well. I made sure the coast was clear, and headed toward the ritual storehouse off in the distance. The lock had been removed, and the door was slightly ajar. That was probably Tomataki's handiwork, done on Takano's behalf on the Watanagashi. Wait, this is Hanyu Rika? I thought we were seeing this from a regular Rika's perspective. I braced myself, then opened the door and took a peek inside. The floor immediately inside was covered in a thick layer of white dust. Judging by the lack of footprints, Takano must not have gone inside. Discussion must have broken down between the two of them after they unlocked the door, leading to Tomataki being chased. And then... it's alright. This is Tomataki. I'm sure he'll be fine. I told myself that deep in my heart, then stepped into the ritual storehouse. I could faintly hear intermittent gunshots coming from far away. At first I was delighted to hear them, but then there were long stretches where I couldn't hear any gunfire that made me worry the club members were done for. So, I gently closed the entrance door at a time when gunshots were still ringing out, and used that knowledge to convince myself they were still safe. The room quickly fell silent and had a musty atmosphere, which made me start to feel cold. The dusky red sun I saw just before heading here was finally getting dimmer. This entire area would soon be bathed in darkness. In which case, the mountain dogs would have to consider retreat, since they weren't familiar with the local terrain.
あと少し。
The opposition was clearly at a disadvantage in this battle. And considering what we heard from Mion and Reina about never seeing any helicopters overhead, it's safe to assume that the H-173 dispersal operation has failed. And now, all of the Sonozaki family's private soldiers and the police who were surrounding the clinic would be heading here, which would put the mountain dogs in an even more precarious position. So, what will Takano do now? The leaders of the faction that opposed the Alphabet Project were already taken down. The people instigating Takano had been neutralized. In other words, her plans had already lost their legitimacy. So, they no longer had any reason to invoke the emergency manual. Takano could be arrested for causing a riot, or maybe they'd silence her in order to bury this conspiracy in the darkness.
使い捨てか。
Either way, Takano would lose everything she had, and she'd forever lose the opportunity to make her wish come true. She was, quite literally, doomed. Thinking about it like that, I felt sorry for her. She took over her grandfather's research and was passionate about studying Hinamizawa syndrome. That diligent attitude was the reason Irie had so much trouble believing Takano could be behind this conspiracy. And how must she have felt to have something she so earnestly worked towards suddenly taken away? No need to think about it. It was nothing short of utter despair. And just as Akasaka indicated, if someone offered her surface-level comfort, who could blame her for wanting to cling to it?
その結果がこの破滅。因果だな。
After suddenly muttering that, I felt uncomfortable. When she fired that signal flare right in front of me in the shrine grounds, she was so full of dark bloodlust that she wanted to tear my body apart like a piece of meat. Wait a minute, so that means that the Rika that has been hanging out with us for the past several episodes was Hanyu? And the Rika that is going around wait, no. But we just saw in this episode Hanyu apparently going around and just shish kebabbing the mountain dogs herself. I'm trying to figure out which Rika was which and when, in retrospect, and it's a little hard for me to figure out at the moment. She shouldn't have needed to feel so horrendously hateful. But what could change her mind what could change her mind at this point? I think you want to say at this point? Pity? Sympathy? Or maybe something completely different? I let out a sigh and shook my head. Takano would utterly reject those thoughts. Or maybe she'd take it as an insult. It would only exacerbate her hatred. she and I were completely incompatible. Plus, there was something else I had to do here.
Rika. Rika.
I called out to her as I looked through this dimly lit room, then listened. When I looked inside through the gap in the door, I'm certain I could feel her presence. It was a very familiar sensation, a unique feeling I could sense no matter how long we'd been apart. Even if I couldn't see her, even if I couldn't hear her voice, I'm certain the feeling was getting through to me. So, I followed the signal I was sensing and walked in a direction that made it feel stronger. Eventually, I stopped in front of the sacred altar. It was decorated with something that looked like a small crystal ball, emitting a faint glow. And I could clearly hear her voice emanating from within.
Hanyu.
Rika!
The crystal ball was roughly the size of large marble, but it was carefully displayed on a small cushion, which made it clear it was more than a mere marble. And there was a reason for that, because that ball was a treasure entrusted to the Furude family ages ago. I knew the purpose of that crystal ball, and so I gently picked it up and held it against my ear. That moment, two consciousnesses melded together, and the surrounding area was bathed in light.
Hanyu. やっと会えたわね。ええ。ごめんなさいなのです、リカ。ずっとあなたを一人にさせてしまって。
最初は驚いたわ。でも、あなたの気配をすぐに感じ取ることができたから、割と早く冷静に帰ることができたけどね。
僕は全然感じなかったのです。だから目覚めた時から不安で怖くて、それどころか自分のことをリカだと勘違いしてしまっていたなんて。
無理もないわよ。だってあなたはこの世界に来た時から私の体を支配していたんだもの。
Wait, so Hanyu was actually in Rika's body this entire time? Throughout this whole arc?
まして私たちはこれまで記憶と意識、感覚すらも共有してきた。あなたが私だと錯覚してしまっても別に不思議じゃないと思うわ。
Now the question that she ended up asking Keiichi back when Keiichi found her in Rika's house several episodes ago. It makes sense now. That had to be around the time she realized who she really was, right?
Rika.
Surprisingly enough, Rika wasn't sad or angry. In fact, she was comforting me in a gentle tone of voice. Even though she was trapped inside this marble all this time. How courageous. I finally realized it on the night of Watanagashi, when I saw my reflection in the river. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, but when I saw it lit by the moonlight, I froze in place, like all the blood in my body had run cold. Because what I saw in the water wasn't Rika's face. It was the face of the girl I've been trying to find all this time. Hanyu. And the proof of that was in the shadows floating in the reflection of the face. That clearly took the shape of a pair of horns. What on earth does this mean? What is Hanyu's face doing here? That moment, all my memories flashed through my mind like video on fast forward. The shock of Hanyu not being here, withdrawing into my shell. The incredible compassion of Keiichi reaching out to me, which I couldn't believe at first. And, even while working to solve the club members' problems, I was always slow to respond, like I was falling behind. I just also realized something else. That disembodied voice we've been hearing all this time here was actually the real Rika speaking, rather than Hanyu. I had their identities completely backwards. I thought that was Hanyu speaking to everybody, but it was actually Rika all along. No. That's weird. There's something wrong? Something felt off about all those experiences. If I really was Rika, would I have behaved so clumsily? No. She trusts them unconditionally and actively worked to solve their problems. And after that, she'd tell them the truth and ask for their support, wouldn't she? That's right. It's strange and abnormal. Just like I thought. The Rika I knew had regained her unwavering heart in the previous world. She was determined to fight in the next one. And the proof of that is that I have the memories of Takano being revealed as the culprit, even though I never suspected her before that. But I didn't have Hanyu by my side. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to repeat worlds like before, and that thought twisted my emotions all around. No. It's more than that. When I regained my will, I rushed to Keiichi and the others. I thought that if I confided with them and sought their help, all my anxiety would be resolved. And yet, why didn't I? Why did I become such a cowardly, distrusting, miserable person? Or maybe this is my original personality? But if so, that means...
嘘、そんな。じゃあ、今ここにいる僕はまさか。
リカちゃん、おい、リカちゃん。
Wait, I remember this scene too. I was trembling so hard I couldn't respond to Keiichi's call, as I clung to my head. And after those 3 short steps, I bumped into a large stone that I didn't realize was there, and let out a brief scream as I fell to the ground.
大丈夫か、リカちゃん。立てるか？怪我してなきゃいいんだけど。
Keiichi was standing right in front of me, crouched down and holding his hand out to me. As I stared at his hand, I had a thought. This hand, and all this kindness, were directed at Rika Furude. In which case, if that's not who I really am, then am I even eligible to accept it? So, I couldn't reach out and grab his hand. I didn't have the courage to do even that. After that, we went deep into the mountains to search for Tomitake. But I slipped and fell into the swamp, and the events after that were a major turning point in confirming my own existence. When my body was thrown off the crumbling cliff and into the air, I landed in the stagnant swamp and got sucked down, unable to pull myself up. No matter how hard I tried, my body continued sinking rather than floating back up. It was a world where I couldn't see anything, even when I opened my eyes. My mouth and my nose were unable to breathe. I felt the pain of my consciousness rapidly fading away. In that moment, I realized this was my death. No way. This is where I die? Even after working so hard and doing so much to overcome the dead end that fate handed me. Keiichi, Akasaka, you were dependable allies, and your willingness to help me was more encouraging than anything I'd seen before. Is an accident like this going to make all of that end in vain? No. No. No, 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 no! There's still something I need to do. Entire mountains of things I need to do. I want to go on living. I can't die yet. That's right. I want to live. There's no way I can die in a place like this! In my rapidly fading consciousness, I shouted to myself, squeezing out all my remaining strength and stretching my arms out overhead. Then, the moment the pain disappeared, I woke up. And I couldn't believe it when I looked at my surroundings. Because what I saw before me was the inside of Rika's room. No doubt about it. And I was just getting out of bed. I looked at my hands and clothes. Not a speck of dirt on them. But how? I'm certain I fell into that swamp.
Keiichi?
リカちゃん本当にリカちゃんなんだよな
Right there. Keiichi was covered in mud and charged into the room to hug me, with his face full of joy and relief. Seeing him like that, I realized that was no dream. That was reality.
むしろリカちゃん、君の方こそ大丈夫かい？さっき入江先生から熱を出して寝込んでいるって聞いたんだけど。
うん、まあ確かにリカさんはもう心配ないようですね。やっぱり過労からの一時的な発熱だったんでしょうな。
特にリカさんは病み上がりなんですから、あまり無理はなさらずに。
みー。
After that, based on what Ushi and Irie told Akasaka, and after trying to keep my cloudy memories consistent, I was finally convinced. I see. This world exists in a slightly different possibility along the original time axis. A parallel world, you could say. It was all the same, even up until the point where Rika Furude worked with Keiichi and the others to circumvent the tragedies. The only difference was that after her performance at the Wachanagashi Festival, she fainted from all the fatigue, combined with all the injuries she suffered. In other words, in my struggle to avoid certain death, I subconsciously activated an ability to allow me to assimilate a Rika who didn't fall into the swamp.
知らなかったのです。僕にこんな能力があったなんて。確かに時間を巻き戻すことは今までにも行ってきましたが、
別におかしくはないと思うわよ。私たちは今までにも幾百幾千の回数で時間軸を遡ってきた。だけどその結末が完全に同じであった時はほとんど、つまり私たちは可能性によって枝分かれした世界、平行世界を数限りなく旅してきたことになる。だったらその横に隣接する世界に次元の壁を踏み越えて移動する力があなたにあったとしても、私は驚かない。
あなたは柔軟ですね、リカ。僕はまだ今一つ納得できない。
あ あんたは考えすぎなのよ、羽生。今ここにあるのが確かな現実でしょ。それに落ちたのがあなたじゃなく私だったら間違いなく死んでいた。ただかなり強引に能力が発動したせいか、沼の周りにいた圭一と山犬たちの一部も巻き込んでしまったみたいだけどね。
It was just as Rika said. Keiichi rushed to the house back then, thinking I had died in the swamp. In other words, he retained his memories of the world before the shift. And the strength and warmth of his painfully tight hug still lingered inside his body.
それにしても、どうしてこんなことになったのでしょう。
So I shifted into a completely different world mid-arc? Right after you fell into the swamp? Without even realizing it?
僕の意識がリカの体の中に入って、その一方であなたがその水晶の中に閉じ込められるなんて。今までだってこんな不可思議な現象は一度も起こったことがなかったのに。
私にもわからない。でもなんとなくあなたのあの時の最後の願い事、あなたは覚えている？
最後の願い事。
When Keiichi and the other club members were slaughtered by Takano and her men. And then Rika finally had her stomach torn open. I just kept on crying and crying. Even though things were starting to go well, it was so disappointing. I was so sad that everyone was killed. And witnessing Rika's brutal murder with my own eyes was so painful it felt like my chest was being torn apart from inside.
羽生。
Even so, Rika didn't show any of her past resignation or despair. On the contrary, she looked up at me with a bright look in her eyes and spoke to me.
私はくじけない。この記憶がたとえ引き継げなくてもいい。がむしゃらに生きていく。6月の狭い日々にしか生きられなくなり、最後には綿流しの日にしか生きていられない存在になってもいい。それが私のせいなら、精一杯生きて、
僕も忘れません。きっと覚えてて、もしリカが忘れていたら、きっと僕が教えますから。
羽生、あなたはやっぱり、冷たい傍観者のふりをしていたのは、
僕もみんなと楽しく過ごす未来に行きたかったです。
Back then, I was in such deep sorrow. I took my true feelings, the ones I patiently endured and kept hidden all this time, and I put them into words. In other words, I was able to borrow Rika's body and visit everyone. As a result of that wish? That determination?
でも、だったらリカだけが蚊帳の外に置かれたということになってしまいます。運命は僕よりもリカの存在こそ必要としていたはず。なのに僕があなたの代わりになってしまっては何の意味もないではありませんか。
思い出して、羽生。最後のこの世界へ行くとき、あなたはレナに何か言われたことがあるでしょう。
Right. I recall what Reina was saying back then.
ねえ、あなた。
Reina turned toward me, even though she couldn't possibly have seen me, and spoke.
あなた、信じてた？ 運命に打ち勝てるって信じててくれた？触れることができなくても、喋ることができなくても、信じることはできるんだよ。あなたも信じてくれたなら、きっと奇跡が起きた。僕が信じて何が変わったのでしょうか。僕は何もできない非力な存在なのです。僕は見ていることしかできない、受け入れることしかできない。そんな僕が信じるだけで奇跡が起こせたというのですか？
ああ、起こせたな。
Keiichi stated it clearly. He wasn't trying to blame her. He was just stating the truth.
そうだね。あの時、こっちは6人だった。向こうは7人だった。あなたが信じてくれてたら、それだけで心は7つだった。だったなら、きっと奇跡が起きた。奇跡はね、触れたり喋ったりで起こすんじゃないんだよ。信じる気持ちが起こすんだよ。名前も知らないあなた。あなたにも悲しみや辛さと戦う勇気が必要だった。あなたも運命と戦う勇気が必要だった。あなたが望んだなら、みんなが望む世界にきっと行けた。それが、あなただけが信じなかっただけでたどり着けなかったなら、それはあなたの責任なの。
Only faith can create a miracle. That sounds like something you might hear in a fairy tale. It's not easy to put into action. People suspect others. They don't trust others. It's easier to not have hope. It's so difficult to believe. That's why faith can make miracles happen. And
あなたもみんなという言葉に含まれてるんだよ。ほら、いつまでも泣いてないで行こう。
as she said that, Reina, and not just her, Keiichi, Rika, and all the others, they all reached their hands out to me. I was so happy. I always thought I was the only one who was different from the rest of them. Their kindness was so lovely. Let's give it a try. I don't know what the end result may be. No, I can't even imagine how the next world might begin. But even so, I'll do it. What I need right now is the courage to take a step forward. And at the same time, I made a vow from the bottom of my heart. I want to move on to a happy future with Rika and our friends. At this time, I won't be sitting as a bystander. I'll believe alongside everyone else, and I'll fight. I don't know what I can do with no physical shape or form. Still, for Rika's sake, and for our diligent and kind-hearted friends, I'll think hard about what I might be able to contribute, and I'll fight as hard as I can, with all my strength.
リカ、やっと僕は分かりましたのです。
And then, I turned toward Rika, who was gently smiling right in front of me.
レナの言う通りなのです。何もできない、傍観するだけの存在だった僕は、あなたたちの頑張りに対しても、どこか人事だった。当事者になって、困難に立ち向かうことがこんなにも辛くて、苦しくて、心と体を切り刻まれるような大変さを伴うものだということを理解していなかった。こんな僕に理科を励ます資格などない。まして、あなたの頑張りに無駄だと水を差すことなど、実におこがましくて傲慢だ。こんな大切なことを僕は今まで気づかずにいたのですね。
羽生。
リカ、 正直に打ち明けます。僕が本当に望んでいたのはあなたの幸せではなかった。僕自身の幸せでした。
When I first met Rika and saw what she looked like, for the first time in years, I was so surprised I gasped, because her face looked just like my daughter, Oka. Even though nobody else could sense my presence, Rika would always give me an innocent smile. That sight had me mesmerized from the bottom of my heart. So, I started staying by her side all the time, and doing all sorts of things to look after her. I kept hoping that she'd become a good girl that everyone loved. And to that end, I generously shared my skills and knowledge with her in order to guide her growth. About the weather, about cooking. Anytime she asked a small question, I'd answer politely and in a way easy enough for a child to understand. Eventually, by doing so all the time, I became a valued presence to Rika, who she could always rely on to respond to her wishes. And it gradually grew into deep trust and affection. It was really fun, and I was so happy. After being separated from my family after such a long slumber, I've lived a lonely life since my reawakening, so having the opportunity to interact with someone brought me irresistible bliss. However, one day, I saw it. Rika was being harshly reprimanded by her mother. I was puzzled at first, wondering what such a perfect girl could have done to upset anyone. But, while listening to this reproachful conversation, I gradually came to understand the reason, and I recognized my sin. Yeah, that's right. Her mother was seriously bothered by how capable Rika was at such a young age. And that was because of your doing. Come to think of it, these days, Rika hasn't been getting along with her mother. Everyone loves being praised more than people being angry with them. You hope that your wishes will be granted, not refused. Nevertheless, you have to know the meaning of why some things are praiseworthy or upsetting, and understand why some wishes are rejected, but others are fulfilled. That takes discipline. But I always wanted to see Rika smiling and happy, so I took all of her mother's opportunities to praise her and fulfill her wishes, and made them my own. As a result, Rika started thinking her mother was always angry with her, and wouldn't listen to anything she said. And her mother started feeling creeped out that her daughter was able to do things she never taught her. Yeah, I guess when you put it like that, when you've effectively taken away Rika's mother's chance to actually be a mother to her own daughter, and yeah, okay. Yeah, I didn't think about it from that angle, so that makes sense too. By the time I noticed it was already too late.
確かにそうね。私はあなたと話している方がよっぽどためになると思っていた。うるさくて厳しい母親に近づいても嫌な気分になるだけだったから。
リカのお母さんには本当に悪いことをしてしまったと思いますです。だから僕はせめて彼女が心の底で願っていたこと、あなたの幸せだけはしっかりと叶えてあげようと心に決めたのです。でもそれをぶち壊しにするような事件が起きました。
In June, of 1983. Mysterious deaths continued to happen year after year, which even claimed the lives of Rika's parents one year. And one time, while I was thinking over who might be responsible, for a moment, I doubted my eyes. I was at the main hall of the Furude Shrine, a sight I should have been intimately familiar with. But on the altar at the top of the stairs, I saw the bloody corpse of a girl. And not only that, but it was...
Rika!
そんなこともあったわね。
駆け寄って声をかけても体をゆすってもリカは動きませんでした。息もしていなくてもう完全に手遅れでした。最初に感じたのは悲しみ、そして怒りと恨みからの復讐の思いでした。でも僕はそれ以上にリカと過ごした幸せな時間を失いたくなかった。だからかつての同胞の掟に逆らってあなたに同化し時間を巻き戻しました。そして惨劇に巻き込まれて命を落とすようなことがないよう、その運命の分岐点を一緒に探そうと思いましたのです。
おかげで同じ時間を無限に繰り返して生きる人であって人ならぬ存在になってしまったけどね。でも最初の巻き戻しで私を死地から呼び戻してくれたことは感謝しているわ。おかげで私いろんな人と出会ってたくさんのことを学ぶきっかけを得ることができたから。
でもそれがそもそもの間違いでした。
After hundreds, thousands, and even tens of thousands of hours rewinding time while searching for a way to revert the tragedy, Rika came to completely depend on me. And along with that, her old homely and submissive personality slowly faded away.
失敗してもまたやり直せばいいじゃない。次はどんな感じに殺されるのかしら。
It was a pessimistic thought process born from resignation and despair, and she became increasingly reluctant to move away from the status quo. She eventually stopped believing in hope. In the beginning, Rika would listen when I encouraged her and urged her to keep going, but those words no longer reached her ears. So, I resorted to underhanded tactics. Next time, I'd reach her by enticing her.
どうせ無駄なのです。結局何も期待はできませんです。
On the other hand, Rika may have felt provoked. She regained the motivation to deny my one-sided scolding. My forsaking attitude had, in fact, worked. However, is there really a path to a happy future? Could I put that into words? When I asked myself that, I became obsessed with that doubt. In fact, even after rewinding time hundreds of times, Rika never managed to escape her death. Maybe I'm just forcing a child to continue suffering inevitable death? Is it even possible to change a fate predetermined by nature? And that thought seemed to get transmitted to her, because Rika also hid in her shell, giving up on trying to overcome fate. Right. That was around the time Rika started drinking that wine that looked like grape juice. But at that point, I no longer knew how to talk to her. Teaching her something I didn't believe in myself wouldn't just be meaningless. It would be hypocritical. That's why the two of us just endlessly continued this repeating cycle.
僕は結局リカを導くことができなかった。圭一たちのような励ましをあなたにしてあげることができなかった。 それはきっと僕自身があなたの苦しさや辛さを本当の意味で理解していなかったからだと思いますのです。
羽生、
ごめんなさい、リカ。僕のせいであなたは。
いいのよ。そんなに自分を責めないで。
Softly, Rika reached her hand out and gently stroked my head. When I looked up, stunned, Rika was quietly shaking her head.
信じていなかったのは、幸せをつかんでみせると言っておきながら、結局仲間任せの気持ちを捨て去ることができなかった。それにどこかで甘えがあったのも確かよ。今度の世界で失敗してもまた次にやり直せばいい、そんな風に思って覚悟が足りていなかった。きっと神様のきつい戒めだったのかもね。だからこうやって自分の体と心を引き剥がされてしまった。中途半端な思いで命がけになってくれているみんなを巻き込もうとする考えはとても失礼で非道なことなんだって。
リカ、
この世界を離れてみてよくわかったわ。幸せも不幸も生きているからこそ感じられる喜びなの。だからみんな一瞬一瞬を大切に懸命に生きようとする。無限に生きてきたおかげで私はそんなことも忘れてしまっていた。だから結局綺麗事を言っていたのは私も同じよ。それをみんなが、そしてあなたが教えてくれた。私の方こそごめんなさい。
Rika gently held my hand as she said that. It was soft and warm. Holding her hand felt so pleasant.
そうですね。僕たちはお互いにちょっとずつ間違っていたんですね。
外から自分の姿を見てそのことに気づけただけでも私は幸せだった。あなたのおかげよ。ありがとう、羽生。
そう言ってくれると僕も救われた気分になれるのです。この体そろそろあなたにお返ししますです。おかげで楽しい思いをさせてもらいました。
I rested my face against the tip of Rika's nose and lightly rubbed it with my forehead. That moment, our bodies were wrapped in a fierce whirlwind. Then our bodies began to feel light, and we rose up into the air. Then, I was standing in the ritual storehouse, with my feet firmly on the ground. It's been so long since I had my own body. My heartbeat, blood flow, and the air inside my lungs. Somehow, it all felt so nostalgic. Even the stiff pain of my sprained ankle felt a little endearing.
リカ、このまま時間が進めばあなたは未来をつかむことができます。山犬たちは部活メンバーによって敗北し、高野美代は破滅するでしょう。
そうね。
嬉しくないのですか？ようやくあなたの待ちに待った幸せな未来が目の前に来ているのですよ。
When I looked up, I silently turned toward Hanyu. She had a calm smile on her face as she waited for my reply. That's right. It's not over yet. There's still something I have to do. A whole lot of people are still fighting with all their strength and all their heart for my sake. For my happiness. And we've carved a path through destiny. All thanks to Hanyu, of course. So, now it's my turn. For the sake of my friends who carved out my path through destiny, I'm going to carve out a path for them too. And at the same time, unless we close the curtain on this tragedy, this comedy that has gotten so many people involved, she won't allow it to end. So,
今、彼女はこちらに向かってきているようです。行きますか。
決まっているでしょ。だから羽生、今度こそ力を貸してもらってもいいかしら。
もちろんなのです。リカの未来、部活メンバーの未来、そして
for everyone's future, let's steer this endless journey toward the goal, with me and her on opposite sides of the coin of fate. This is it, isn't it? Whatever's coming next after all this, it's our final confrontation in every sense. So, I'm just sitting here, my mind more than a little blown at all the revelations that was just thrust into my lap. All the recontextualizations of previous events I'd seen up until this point. Good going to whoever wrote this arc. You managed to surprise me in a way that doesn't feel like bullshit in the slightest. Well done. I mean, yeah, I was starting to suspect that Hanyu must have been with us and was probably impersonating Rika towards the end of the last episode, but in some ways she was actually, but I didn't think she was actually Rika the entire time from the very beginning of when this arc started. And that she was actually in Rika's body. And she confused herself with Rika the whole while. And it was only right before she ended up falling into the swamp, it was when she realized who she really was. And then I'm remembering that freak out she had at the river initially, and how that makes sense now. Yeah, I gotta get props to whoever wrote this arc. They managed to foreshadow all this stuff in a pretty efficient way, and I think it paid off quite well in retrospect. It's quite the effective twist. Top of that, we get a little bit of further backstory regarding Rika and Hanyu's first few times traveling back in time after Rika was killed for the first time. I mean, it wasn't much, but I mean, it was nice to get a little bit of a background story on that too. And now that I think about it, I was always under the impression that Rika's ability to time travel was something that was probably unconsciously on her part, started by Rika herself, but given that Hanyu's own abilities and the fact that she was basically in Rika's life practically since the beginning, I guess it makes sense in retrospect for the truth to be revealed that it was actually Hanyu's doing that Rika was able to start traveling into parallel worlds ever since she died the very first time, and that was what made her into a unique existence. It was all Hanyu's doing rather than Rika's, and Rika was just along for the ride after a while. And with all the times that they both repeated the time loops, trying to prevent Rika's death, and each and every one of them failing, they both effectively gave in into despair after a while, and then just went through the motions of trying to solve the mystery of what's actually happening to themselves, just because it was lip service, as she so accurately put it. They said the things, they did the motions, but they didn't really have any serious motivation to actually believe in the words or actually put in the effort to really try. Because, after all, if Rika dies, they could just effectively rewind and try again. So why bother putting in any serious effort in that case? You screw up, you can just start over again. There was no serious incentive, no serious consequence to failure. So therefore, they didn't have any serious reason to really try until now, when Hanyu mistakenly thought that this would be her last attempt as Rika to try and save herself, come hell or high water. And that motive, even if it didn't turn out to be real in the end, gave her the motivation that she needed here to actually seriously try for once. And as a result, well, look at how things are happening now. Victory is practically within our grasp. Which in turn plays into the themes of this entire story, honestly, is how with enough determination under your belt, you can change even the wheels, you can even redirect the direction the wheels of fate go into your favor. Because ultimately fate too can be influenced by the power of will. So, or something like that. I know I could have probably worded that a bit better, but that's the general gist of it, as I understand things. So, with all that out of the way, I think I'm going to go ahead and end things here, and we can see what happens when Takano and Rika, and along with Hanyu, I suppose, all have their little Mexican standoff in the last episode. I'm excited. I mean we know that the heroes are going to win in the end, but even so, I can't help but wonder what the emotional payoff is going to end up being like this time around in the end, once the heroes and the villain in this case come meet each other face to face. Really anxious to see how this will play out in the end. One way or the other, we're getting close to the end, I mean. So, I hope those of you who have tuned into this latest episode of the Higurashi When They Cry console arcs have enjoyed it. If you did, and you'd like to see more content from me, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. And I will see you all next time. Take care.